Hello everybody, this is Mtima Radi. I'm your brother Vladimir Dees. Mtima Radi, everybody. So lightning. A couple of days ago, it was announced in, I think it was New York Times, that China will go ahead with their development of a regional bank, similar to what was once called USAID, the IMF, and now we know it as simply the World Bank. China said they were going to do this. They already have backing uh, from European countries. Some European countries have already signed on. There was an article about this last month um, in, I think it was Wall Street Journal. And uh, Secretary of State John Kerry was asked, what did he think about this? And John Kerry said, it sounds like a good idea. Now, in light of what the military is doing, which is trying to, or what they purport the military is doing, which is placing bases seemingly around China, to have the Secretary of State say, seems like a good idea, is quite telling. It's quite telling. It's also quite telling because there are several Chinese businesses which own significant portions of American infrastructure. If you recall, um, it will I want to say it was 2006 2005, but George Bush's second term, there was a plan to sell several of the ports of the United States, to China, and that really garnered a intense kickback via the public, and so that was scuttled. But China already owns major portions of infrastructure in America, major buildings, major highways, things like that, which is just part of what capitalism is about. And the fact that they are now doing this, and multiple European countries have signed on to this, but the U.S. has not yet, and that word is the important word, yet. The U.S. has not done this yet, and the fact that this is going on, and there is very little talk about this, there is very little discussion going on about this, is frightening. And not frightening as in a scary way, but startling, because what is essentially happening is there is a economic paradigm shift happening or occurring right now, and it's one where the major economic powers, which used to be centered in London and then the United States, I've heard the argument that economic policy is still centered in London, which makes a lot of sense to me personally. Um, it may indeed be why the NFL is now looking to London to expand. Uh, but it you see this occurring, and I I don't want to speculate. There's a part of me that wants to speculate, but I don't want to speculate why. There could be metaphysical reasons. There could be things coming up that are the reasons. But the funny thing about this is, when listening to, and I don't mean funny as in ha ha, but there's a correlation here. When I was listening to a couple of Amos Wilson speeches, Amos Wilson started talking a lot about economics in the last days of his life, particularly the last 2 or 3 years of his life. He always talked about them, but there is a more eager focus on them. And he made a mention in one of his lectures that the Asians, this was 1992, 93, they were already talking about the next century being the Asian century. They were already talking about it. And I think it was the same lecture where he said, look, yeah, I've been reading things in the paper for the last, 10 years where the agent said, this next century is going to be ours. This next century is going to be ours. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be ours. And so the mentality which he points out that you have to say, look, this next century is ours, not yours, ours, and then go about eating someone else's lunch so you can make it your own. That is a dynamic thing which black people need to learn about. in the present sense, and he also made a mention in 94, not 96. He was unfortunately passed away by then. But he made uh, a statement. He said, it really is my fear that Black America will enter. We have about 10 years to get it right. And if we do not, it is my fear that Black America will enter into a death spiral in which we'll not be able to recover. And unfortunately, I see that. The onset of, well, that's for another day. Anyway, in the present tense, this is all staggering because Qaddafi, which I always spell it with a K because of Tupac, but Qaddafi was he was killed. To stop him from doing the same thing, and encouraging the same thing on the continent of Africa, he was killed, dead. That's why the whole Libyan thing went down. He was going to do that, and he was going to tie the money to the resources of Africa. He was killed. Saddam Hussein was killed to stop him from not necessarily doing the same thing, but he was going to change. He had already started trading his oil in euros, which made a lot of sense to me when I found that out, because back in the day when I used to read the newspaper, there was a lot in 2003, 2004, 2005 about the euro having plateaued and then coming down, and there was always mentions of how the euro increased before it decreased, but they never said why. They never said why. They were always careful not to say why the euro had increased. So China is able to do this. China is, with Kerry saying, it sounds like a good idea. He's endorsing what China's doing. He's endorsing it, 100% endorsing it. And yet, they are willing to kill any African leader who says Africa needs its own independent regional development bank. Understand the word development, because that's what all this is about. Development. Africa can then take its massive resources, more resources than any other continent on the planet. It is quite interesting. I just found out it is, if memory serves, the second largest continent on the planet, easily, and only Asia has more landmass, but Africa is not able to do this. Africa is not able to do this, but China is. And what I say now is, Obama, I was one of the stupid ones. I didn't see it and I couldn't see it. I was young. I was dumb. But Obama was put into office for a couple simple reasons. But Obama was put into office to keep our minds occupied while the rich did their business. And their business was to set up the new economic order. NEO. The new economic order. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted. And they knew people would get pissed off at President Obama while not looking to the wealthy. They knew it. They also knew that they could keep black people occupied, and that was their biggest fear. You got to understand this, people. They worry about white people, but as long as they wave their guns and say, look, we're going to take away your guns, well, they know white people are going to go running and saying, oh my God, you can't take away our guns, we got a second. But the white people ain't going to do nothing with them. They ain't stupid. White people will talk. That's what they do. Now they do. I don't know. They can kill black people, they can kill red people, they can kill whatever, whoever else. Tell them to kill a bunch of brown people, they're fine with it. But when it comes to standing up to their own white people and saying, no, we ain't going to take your oppression anymore. Only a few of them have ever had the courage to actually challenge the system to the point of putting their lives in danger. Now, this isn't me calling for violence. This is me stating the facts. This is why the quote, white radical, was so disgusting to the white elite, and why they had to change the name of it. Because the white radical said, this stuff is never changing. Never changing. They saw the flaws in their own people. Real white radicals, by the way. Real ones. But they feared black. They feared black consciousness and black kickback. And when I say kickback, I don't mean giving money. I mean a literal kickback, where we are kicking you back. You hit us, we kick you. And what they have been doing for the last 50 years, I don't care if it was planned here or if it was a metaphysical plan, what they have been doing for the last 50 years is they have been conditioning us. They have been conditioning us to make us passive. That's what they've been doing. And with Barack Obama, that wasn't, I once made the statement that Barack Obama was Novocaine. Barack Obama wasn't Novocaine. Barack Obama was I don't even know what to call him. Because he so hypnotized us and put us all to sleep that now none of us think. We don't think. And even the ones who do are incapable of marrying these many different concepts to bring together one cohesive whole. We can't bring the metaphysics into the economics because, well, economics just has no place in metaphysics, we're told. We can't bring the economic into our consciousness because economic inflates, as the European understand it, and all it does is inflate the ego. It inflates the ego. And we, sure enough, cannot bring the soul in music into education. We can't do it anymore. And we can't think like that anymore because we are all so inclusive. We have been murdered psychologically. We are so inclusive that we don't think of nothing but giving it over to the white man. That's what we do. The white man is God and goddess. Oh, well, if we ain't got white people in it, then there's a problem. Oh, we got to be universal. To hell with being universal. What does the word universal actually mean? It means one verse, one verse, one verse. When they talk about diversity, that means two verses. Two verses. And it's not bringing them together. No, they're running along each side. They're running along, they're parallel to each other. That's diversity. They're parallel. And then when you talk about going from diversity to university, they're going parallel and then they come together and they're one. That's what that is. And that's what they've programmed us to do. See, they had to get us thinking with diversity, oh, well, diversity still means we're different. No. We don't understand politics on the metaphysical range. All right? What we were doing in the 1960s and the early 1970s had nothing to do with diversity. We didn't give a damn about diversity. What we were doing is we were liberating ourselves and we were separating our tract in history from theirs. Because we understood, like Martin Luther King finally did before he was killed, that these people were leading us to destruction. We got that finally. So we, instead of saying, well, we're trying to integrate and come over to you and make universal, we said, we ain't even running parallel to you anymore. We're going over here. And you can be over here. That's what we did. And we were moving away from that. And Martin Luther King wasn't the cause of it collapsing. It wasn't the cause. Everyone likes to blame Martin King for that. That had nothing to do with it. In fact, if you look, what King and the people had originally hoped actually came true. They had raised the hopes of consciousness, and from that consciousness came the seeds of strength which enabled black people to do this. The same with Malcolm X. The same with Malcolm X. Both of them did not crash this. Who crashed it was the white man. He saw what was happening. White people was going this way. Black people was going this way. And as black people went this way, guess what happened? The power that we had was so strong, it pulled white people over. It pulled white people over. And people in corporations saw this. And they said, whoa, that's some power. We got to do something about this. So then, took them a while. They started talking about affirmative action. And then from affirmative action, we started talking about diversity. And diversity, again, 2 verses. 2 verses. So now, you harmonize the verses. And they spent 20-some years harmonizing the verses. And then, those 2, don't forget, black people was going this way, and they was pulling white people over. You had at the same time the rise of the conservatives. You had at the same time the rise of the conservatives. You never forget this. The parallel, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, right? Well, you also have the harmony aspect, where then black people becoming more radicalized, we're becoming more active. Radicalized meaning rooted, 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 rooted. Now, none of this other nonsense that they've made it. None of it. It means rooted. They're becoming more rooted in who they actually are. So we're doing that, and we're pulling this way. And white people, in a sense, develop anti-war fever. Why? Because they saw what we were doing as a war. And so they developed an anti-war fever. And what that anti-war fever actually spawned was the conservative movement. So the conservative movement was the pushback. When they said it was the backlash, it wasn't. It was the pullback, because black people were moving this way. And black people were saying, we ain't following you. You can go on. So as black people moved this way, white people started pulling. And if you read conservative literature from then, and I'll be honest, I haven't read much of it, but I've read histories of conservatism from then. Or should I say, listen to audiobooks on histories of conservatism from then. The conservatives were pretty adamant. They said, we are not trying to assimilate with American culture. We are trying to hijack it. We are trying to pull it over. And that's exactly what they did. But in order to do that, they had to pull over black people. They had to pull over black people. And that meant going from black people moving this way to pulling them over and making black people snap back into line with them. And this is the diversity. This is the 2, it's like going on a road, the 2 lines. The 2 lines. And then we went from that to the universality, which we see prominently today. And then now it isn't even universality. It is full-blown integration. It is full-blown integration. And really, it's a usurpation. And we have to keep this in mind, because everything that we are seeing is part of this design, is part of this plan. I don't know. I'm imagining the ending is more to do with taking over our birthrights, our genetic strands, all of that. But I'm not sure. But we have to be about merging these things now. We have to be about merging these things which we see as not mergeable. And we cannot get crazy now talking about, I'll use what Dr. King said, we cannot engage in guerrilla romanticism. We have to be honest. With the ascendancy of China, the world is signaling to us that we don't care about Africans, we just want Africa. We want Africa. And it is my belief that every black person on this planet has a duty to promote the health and well-being of the heart of this planet. And that's Africa. You look at any map, Africa is in the center. It is in the center. They try to manipulate this by putting Europe here and putting Asia here as if they're not the same continent. But they're not the same continent. They're not the same continent. Africa is the center of the planet. That's where the most resources were placed. That's where the most iron. That's where the most metal. That's where the most just resources in general. And black people need to help develop it and protect it. We are. They've gotten us into a very bad spot. They've gotten us to a very bad spot, especially spiritually. Especially spiritually. All right. Thank you guys. Love to hear your comments, your questions, your concerns. Just drop me a line, okay? Peace.